Okay, Art? Anything you want to explain about all the good gear you got up here? Or do you want to walk people around afterwards, or what?
Stan, you can pretty much cover everything. The only thing is this, if they're not familiar with the French equipment, that's it.
Yeah, the French equipment, the gas mask in particular, okay. American troops were given gas masks, same as the British. The respirator, was it Mark 1 or something?
Mark 1.
Mark 1.
Small British box respirator.
The problem with it is, it's great for guys like me that got noses, because it's got a clamp. But a lot of African Americans, it was worthless. But the French mask didn't require a nose. So they actually ended up with a better piece of equipment when they served with the French with regard to gas mask than the one that was the American issue. And the thing about the American issue gas mask is the inventor of the gas mask, there's a couple of people who want to take credit, we'll never know for sure, but one of them was an African American who had invented it for coal miners and stuff. And yet when the African American troops went into combat, they were better off if they had a French mask. Go ahead.
I'm not going to go over all this stuff. You're more than welcome afterwards to come up and look at the items if you have any specific questions. But I'm just going to grab a couple random things that he went over just to explain to you. The American troops that went over obviously were trained and used to using American equipment. When these soldiers were given the French equipment, it was opened up a whole different perspective on, or I should say opened up a different can of worms here for them. This was the French equipment pouch setup for using with the Lebel and the Berthier rifle. This is a model 1882, meaning the year 1882. The French equipment was by far no means an equivalent to what the Americans were using. So the cartridges in this French equipment, this is basically, you had a rear pouch, two front pouches. The cartridges were wrapped in paper and string tied like the Civil War cartridges were. That's how the French cartridges were issued out. So here's these American soldiers being trained with model 1917 gear and the model 1910 pack, and that all the model 1910 pack and equipment. They come over here, they trade that stuff off, and they're getting obsolete stuff like this. Canteens, you mentioned about canteens. This is a French canteen. Usually they said soldiers carried two of them. One of them had water in them. One of them was diluted with wine and water. There's a large stopper here on one side, and over here on the other side, there's a small little spout that came out that you basically could sip. So this is a very, very bizarre. The equipment was not even anything close to like what the United States used. I mean, you can do a comparison. It says the gas mask, these are the gas mask cans. The French uniforms that they were, when they got issued, they didn't issue them, to my knowledge, I don't think they got the long coats. They got the short, what was called tunics. These became popular with a lot of French troops later in the war. Instead of wearing the long, knee-length overcoat, these are the French uniforms in what's called horizon blue. He went over the helmets, the typical French Adrian pattern helmet, which came out in 1915. Infantry badges on the front. These were by far no means as good as the American helmets, which were made out of a magnesium steel base. These were tin. They weren't good for anything more than stopping, small fragments of dirt and wood and stone. Not going to stop a bullet. Some of the troops that were assigned with the British. Now, there's a change up here. And like I said, I'm not going to go over everything on the table. Anybody more than happy to come up, you can look and ask. That's your standard model 1917 uniform with the patch pockets made of very coarse wool. This is a British-made U.S. uniform. This is made out of British cloth. There's slight color variation. Inside this jacket has all British size markings and broad arrows because they weren't going to equip the American troops, keep bringing clothing. So Great Britain started to manufacture American uniforms in Great Britain issued to the Americans. Interesting thing was that this is, if you notice, this doesn't have the pockets on the inside. This is very close to, or the type of uniform is called the Model 1902 service dress that the British used, which didn't have the exterior patch pocket. So this became the Model 1918 U.S. uniform. We adopted that. Also, something that changed with the Americans were we went into war wearing knee breeches. Kind of like what we call knickers. placed on the calves, okay? British soldiers wore full-length trousers, and by the way, this is brand new. These still have the cutter tags on them from the U.S. government. Reason being, they're about a size 22 waist. That's the reason why they pilots survived. We adopted and just carried on into World War II. The British used a straight leg trouser. This is a very rare pair of model 1918 U.S. trousers, straight leg. These became the basic service equipment or service trousers that the soldiers wore in through World War II. The type of will change, but we adopted these from the British, who were usually had their soldiers in straight leg trousers. Other than that, there's really not a lot with the equipment. Grenade bags in the United States did not, a hand grenade was not part of our normal ordnance prior to World War I. Until we developed our own hand grenade, we were using British and French. These are grenade assault bags. This is how the grenades would have been carried. This is a typical number 5 Mills bomb. This is a British hand grenade, just the type that Great Britain used. The Type 36, or number 36, which was the last of the series of these, was carried on through World War II, and I think as late as the 1950s was still being used in Great Britain. I'm not really sure on that. I don't want to be quoted on it, but this grenade stayed in service a very, very long time. On the other hand, soldiers with the French, this is a French assault grenade bag, and these are the French grenades. You remove the cap off the top of this, and you strike it, and after you struck it, you had to get rid of it. So this is the type of hand grenades that the soldiers that were issued, were French troops got issued these type of hand grenades. The United States, like I said, didn't develop their own hand grenade until late in the war, and it was basically a combination of both the French and the British put together. Most of the stuff is self-explanatory. You guys have seen it all. You're more than welcome to come up and take a closer look at it. Stan mentioned before the engineering tools. Here's a complete set of all of your tools, and they were issued out at a certain rate per company. So many men carry a shovel, so many a bolo, so many a hatchet, so many a pickmatic, so many a pair of wire cutters. The stuff that's out here is your basic field equipment minus a few personal items. So what I'll do is I really don't have anything to say much of this. I mean, if you want, like I said, you guys can come up and take a look at the stuff. You're more than welcome to. But I mean, unless Stan, you want to pick a couple.
Yeah,
things
real
up,
fast.
You're more than welcome to.
Real fast. When I bought this helmet, it was explained to me it's a British helmet, the U.S. mark. The way you spot them is it's called a donut. The British would put a piece of rubber circle, and they used split rivets to put these chin strap holders on. The Americans used a sail rivet, and they got rid of the donut. Just so you know, I mean, these things are 100 years old. They're deteriorating dramatically. In Britain, they put a warning out to schools: don't let the kids handle these anymore, because they're 100 years old, and the British versions had asbestos. And they figure after 100 years, it's drying out.
Yeah.
Okay, and in particular, they warned, do not have the kids put the gas masks on, because that too had asbestos. And after 100 years, you bet the term is what, friable? It sure is.
Yeah, here's the gas mask. Certain items on this table were not part of the regular United States Army equipment list, and it was only developed because of the war. The gas mask being one of them. Our design is pretty much copied after the small British box respirator mask. So our mask is based on the British design. The helmet, of course, the Brodie helmet was British. We adopted the British helmet. This stayed in use up until about 1940, the old Kelly helmets. And the only difference between the Kelly version, they didn't continue to make these after the war. Somewhere, I think in the 30s, somewhere in the late 20s, 30s, they removed these very, very fragile liners, and they put a leather liner in it with a chin strap. And those became what we call the Kelly helmets. They're basically World War I shells. They repainted them, put a new liner in. Most of those helmets all are World War I vintage shells. The inners are different. The shoes, yes. These are post-World War I, but they are pretty much the same style. These are the British trench shoes or ammunition shoes. These were issued out to the U.S. soldiers in lieu of the model 1917 shoes, which I have a nice condition here. These are standard Army ankle boots, which were used up until almost, into the 30s. They were still wearing a rough-out ankle boot. Hobnails had disappeared, but the World War I versions were hobnailed with steel heel plates on them. That's about it. I mean, like I said, you guys have seen most of all the stuff at our annual, our yearly expo, so you're more than welcome to come up and look at it, see it closer.
Right,
But that's about all I have. You stand, you're welcome just to...
Yeah, if you go on the internet and you do Harlem Hellfighters or 369th, captured by the Russians. Because the movie was made in Russia. And, the whole design of the tank is supposed to be a super tank. And that's what it is. It's the Pershing. Yeah. Tired commander. No, he was British. But he was the, he said, I got a small part in this.
Westinghouse, no. Westinghouse, those are the answers.
Yes, those Germans had the 76 millimeter, which was, that much more. And that was a little bit less than the 88. That was a good done. The low velocity 75. And that 76 was an amazing gun. And at the race, they were fighting 300 yards. Yeah, you can kill a tiger with that. If you get a chance, the movie's called White Tiger, and it's made in Russia, and they submitted it for an Academy Award like 3 or 4 years ago. And one of our guys in the club bought $30 DVD. It's got subtitles, but they're in Russian. I go on YouTube, and there it is with English subtitles. I watch it. They get the equipment.
All right.
They got it over there still, Yeah, put it on the floor. Let's see Willis in there. No, yeah, that's it. He's got a sniper lapel and a Remington. You have the cup bowling belt. I really needed that. That and a show. I'm sorry, nobody had either one. I hear they're hard to come by. You can put it over here. Glenn Kay was going to bring us dummy Vickers, but he has to work. This is one of mine.
Oh, I was just looking at, I don't have one of the camel painted US numbers. But never did.
I got pictures on American on the front with them, so that was it. Yeah, they'll move on occasion, or I'm not sure exactly what he did.
Yeah, he got put his Mark?
Yeah, where am I going to look?
They became 165th. Okay. See, I don't know all the numbers to remember.
And my reenactment unit and NSSA team is the 69th New York. So I was psyched when I found that.
Put them right here. Open up the case so I can grab them. I don't want to mount the lapel on a rack. So that's rack lapel. Scope. I don't want to take a chance, but I can get to it, which is what's really more important. I can walk over and get to it. Look at that stuff. For years I couldn't find that stuff. Then I ended up buying one box from them, and then you bought the other two. What do you need? Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Couldn't come by. But the Remington, now the only thing with Remington, somebody told me about, since they were making 07-15s, they made all their ammo fine for that gun. They weren't thinking of the lapel. So the problem you run into is the lapel. No, it doesn't have the ring. You put it in the tubular magazine. But it's soft. So,
You don't listen to me. Right. You listen to Stan. Me,
Damn. Just thought I'd keep this available because I'm gonna need it for one of my. Got everything? American 369 by Stephen Harris, but the real excellent book is called Harlem's Rattlers, because that's what they called themselves. They didn't call themselves Hellfighters. They prefer to be called Rattlers, and their symbol was a rattlesnake with "Don't Tread on Me," all right? And this book has just tons of information.